The ruins were older than any map in the galaxy. They stood buried beneath layers of black stone and glassed sand, silent proof that a powerful civilization had once lived there and then vanished. No one remembered their name. Only their mistakes remained. Deep underground, past collapsed halls and broken towers, the artifact waited. It hovered above the floor without support, a massive shape of dark metal and glowing lines. The light pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat that never stopped. Every pulse sent a low vibration through the chamber, as if the artifact was breathing. The alien girl stood several steps away from it. Her name was Sira. She was small compared to most species in the expedition, her body slender, her skin pale blue with faint silver patterns that glowed softly under stress. Those patterns were glowing now. Her people believed it was a sign of harmony with ancient energy. That was why she had been chosen. Sira did not cry. She did not shake. She had known this day would come long before she arrived on this dead world. Around her stood representatives from many races, tall armored commanders, scientists covered in instruments, diplomats watching from behind energy shields. They all kept their distance from the artifact. Every species knew the stories. This artifact had been discovered centuries ago. Every attempt to destroy it had failed. Bombardment from orbit did nothing. Star-level weapons only made its energy output worse. When teams tried to shut it down from within, the artifact responded the same way every time. It demanded a life, not just any life, a living being compatible with its energy field, someone whose biology could complete the circuit and overload it from inside. And that overload always meant death. Sira's species had the highest compatibility rate. Out of thousands tested across the galaxy, only her people could survive long enough inside the field to trigger the shutdown sequence. Even then, no one had ever survived the final moment. She had been raised with this truth. Some lives were meant to end so others could continue. That belief was as old as her culture. A few steps behind her stood the human. His name was Daniel Reyes. He wore a standard exploration combat suit, scratched and dusty from the descent into the ruins. Compared to the others, he looked almost fragile. No natural armor, no glowing skin, no visible weapons beyond what hung at his side. Humans were still new to the galactic community. Many species considered them reckless, emotional, and strangely stubborn. Daniel had been quiet since they entered the chamber, too quiet. He watched Sira as technicians made final adjustments to the containment field. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. He had read the mission briefing. He knew the plan. He hated it. The lead coordinator, a tall insect-like being with layered eyes, spoke through a translator. "The energy spike is increasing. We are out of time. Sira of the Luminari, you may proceed." Sira took a slow breath. She turned slightly, looking back at the gathered figures. Her eyes paused on Daniel for a moment longer than the others. Humans had strange eyes, she thought, always moving, always questioning. "It is an honor," she said calmly. "If my life can end this threat, then it is enough." She stepped forward. The artifact responded immediately. The glowing lines along its surface brightened, shifting into complex patterns. The air grew heavy. Instruments began to scream warnings. Daniel took a step forward without realizing it. "Sira, wait," her head turned. "Human Daniel," she said gently. "This is how it must be." "No," he said. His voice echoed louder than he expected in the vast chamber. "It really doesn't." The insect-like coordinator turned toward him. "Human representative, stand back. Interference will risk catastrophic failure." Daniel ignored it. He walked closer, stopping just short of the field's edge. He could feel heat against his skin, a pressure like standing too close to a storm. "You're telling me," he said, looking from the artifact to the others, "that this thing only shuts down if someone dies?" "That is correct," replied one of the scientists, a crystalline being whose body refracted the artifact's light. "This has been confirmed through repeated observation." Repeated observation, Daniel repeated slowly. Or repeated assumption, Sira frowned. Human, please. I do not fear death. I do, Daniel said, when it's unnecessary. A low rumble passed through the chamber. The artifact's pulses sped up. We must proceed, the coordinator said sharply. Delay increases the risk to nearby systems. Daniel looked directly at Sira. Did anyone ever try asking why it needs a sacrifice? She hesitated. It is ancient. Its creators designed it this way. That's not an answer, Daniel said. That's tradition. Sira's silver patterns flared brighter. You do not understand. My people have prepared for this role for generations. To refuse would dishonor them. Daniel shook his head. You're not a switch. You're not fuel. You're a person. The word felt strange in the chamber. Person. So human. Before anyone could stop him, Daniel stepped into the edge of the energy field. Alarms erupted. Human, withdraw immediately, several voices shouted. Pain slammed into Daniel like a wall. His suit screamed warnings. Muscles locked. He dropped to one knee, teeth clenched. Sira rushed toward him instinctively, then froze. You will die, she cried. Yeah, Daniel gasped. That's kind of my point. He forced himself upright, eyes locked on the artifact's shifting patterns. He wasn't looking at it as a god or a curse. He was looking at it like a machine, because that's what humans did. Everyone assumes this thing needs a life, he said through the pain. But what if it just needs input? The crystalline scientist hesitated. Clarify. Daniel tapped the side of his helmet, pulling up his suit's scanner display. Look at the energy flow. It's looping, not consuming, it's waiting for a completion signal. The scientist adjusted its instruments. That is possible. The coordinator snapped. Speculation is irrelevant. We do not have time. Daniel laughed once, harsh and breathless. Funny thing about humans, we live on speculation. He looked at Sira again. You don't have to die today. Her voice shook. Then billions might. Or none of them will, he said, if we stop following the instructions of something that wiped out its own creators. That struck her harder than the energy field ever could. The artifact's pulses grew faster, more erratic. The chamber lights dimmed. Daniel knew he couldn't stand much longer. His suit was already diverting power to keep his organs stable. But he also knew something else. The artifact was reacting to resistance. See that, he said, nodding toward the flickering lines. It's not angry, it's confused. Sira stared. For the first time, doubt cracked through her calm acceptance. No one has ever refused it, she whispered. Daniel smiled weakly. First time for everything. He reached out, gloved hand hovering just short of the artifact's surface. His sensors spiked wildly. Human, the coordinator shouted. This is an order. Daniel didn't look back. If this thing was built to demand fear, he said softly, then I'm not giving it what it wants. The artifact flared brightly, its light flooding the chamber. Energy surged outward, throwing several observers off their feet. Sira shielded her eyes, heart racing. Daniel's hand touched the artifact. The world seemed to hold its breath. The artifact did not explode. Instead, the glow shifted, patterns breaking apart, reforming into something unstable. The pulse stuttered like a heart skipping beats. Daniel cried out as pain ripped through his nervous system. His suit screamed critical warnings. Sira ran to him, grabbing his arm, trying to pull him back. Stop, please, he looked at her, eyes burning with determination. Promise me, he said through clenched teeth. If this works, you live. She swallowed hard. I promise. The artifact pulsed again, weaker this time. For the first time in its long existence, it hesitated. And the galaxy's oldest rule, that someone must always die, began to crack. The chamber trembled as energy readings spiked, then dipped unpredictably. Scientists shouted conflicting data. The coordinator stood frozen, unable to issue another command. Sira held onto Daniel, torn between fear and a growing, impossible hope. The human had refused fate itself, and the artifact did not know how to respond. The light dimmed suddenly, plunging the chamber into near darkness, broken only by emergency systems. Daniel collapsed, unconscious, still breathing. Sierra knelt beside him, her silver patterns glowing brighter than ever, not with resignation but with something new. Hope. Whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same again. The chamber did not return to normal. Even after the artifact dimmed, the air stayed heavy, filled with tension and broken expectations. Emergency lights cast long shadows across the ancient walls. The artifact hovered lower now, its once perfect symmetry disrupted. Lines of light flickered unevenly, like a wounded creature struggling to stay conscious. Daniel lay motionless on the cold stone floor. Sierra knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she pressed them against his chest plate. His suit still showed signs of life, weak but present. That alone felt like a miracle. "He lives," one of the medics said in disbelief after checking the readings. The human nervous system is severely overloaded but stable. The coordinator stepped closer, its many eyes fixed on the artifact. Impossible. Contact without sacrifice should have triggered a full release. And yet it didn't, Sierra replied quietly. Her voice carried something new, not defiance, not anger, change. The crystalline scientist floated closer to the artifact, instruments spinning rapidly. The energy cycle is broken. The internal loop has destabilized but not collapsed. "What does that mean?" another voice demanded. "It means," the scientist said slowly, "the artifact no longer knows what state it is supposed to be in." The idea spread through the chamber like a shockwave. For thousands of years, the artifact had followed one rule. A life entered, energy surged, destruction followed, or containment through death. Now someone had touched it and lived. Humans had done what they always did. They broke the rules without asking permission. Daniel was moved to a medical platform at the edge of the chamber. Sierra stayed close, refusing to leave his side despite repeated requests. Her people's elders watched her with concern and confusion. This was not how the story was supposed to go. She was supposed to be remembered as a noble sacrifice. Instead, she was alive. And that terrified her more than death ever had. As medics worked, Sierra looked at Daniel's face. Humans aged differently, she knew. Their skin carried lines of experience even when they were young. Daniel's expression, even unconscious, looked stubborn. Like he was still arguing with the universe. "You should not have done that," she whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. Hours passed. The artifact continued to fluctuate, not violently but unpredictably. Small energy surges rippled outward, forcing the expedition to keep shields active. Every fluctuation was a reminder that the danger was not over. "We need to complete the shutdown," the coordinator said during an emergency council meeting. "Partial destabilization is worse than a controlled sacrifice." The word sacrifice hung in the air. Sierra stood among them, her posture straighter than before. "There will be no sacrifice." Several leaders turned toward her sharply. "You speak out of turn," one elder said. "Your role, my role has changed," Sierra said, surprising even herself with the firmness in her voice. "The human showed us that." "He nearly destroyed the chamber," another replied. "He saved my life," she said, "and possibly countless others." The crystalline scientist interrupted. "The human's actions revealed something important. The artifact responds not to death but to resistance." Silence followed. "Explain," the coordinator demanded. "The artifact's creators built it as a control device," the scientist said. "It was never meant to be destroyed easily. It was designed to test obedience. A species that offered a life proved it would submit to fear. The artifact then entered a dormant state, but when the human refused, it lost its expected input." Sierra felt a chill. "Then every sacrifice before was unnecessary," the scientist finished. The realization struck like a physical blow. Generations of lives, entire cultures built around accepting death as duty, all based on a lie enforced by ancient technology. Daniel woke several hours later. Pain greeted him first. Pain and exhaustion so deep it felt like gravity itself had increased. He tried to sit up and failed. "Don't," Sira said quickly, placing a hand on his shoulder. He opened his eyes slowly, squinting against the light. When he focused, he saw her face hovering above him. "Hey," he rasped. "Still alive." She let out a sound that was almost a laugh, almost a sob. "Yes, because of you." "Good," he murmured, then closed his eyes again. But rest did not last. The artifact reacted the moment Daniel regained consciousness. Its light surged suddenly, brighter than before. Alarms screamed again. "Energy spike!" someone shouted. The artifact's surface split open along invisible seams, revealing a core of swirling light. Sira felt it instantly. A pull, a calling. Her body responded before her mind could stop it. She cried out, dropping to one knee as the silver patterns across her skin flared violently. "Sira!" Daniel shouted, forcing himself upright despite the pain. The scientist scanned her quickly. The artifact is attempting to re-establish its original circuit. It recognizes her as a compatible conduit. "No," Daniel said. "Not happening." He swung his legs off the platform and stood, ignoring the medic's protests. Every step hurt, but he moved anyway, placing himself between Sira and the artifact. "You can't just block it," the coordinator warned. "The artifact will drain her regardless." Daniel looked at Sira. She was trembling, fighting the pull with every ounce of strength. "Look at me," he said firmly. She did. "Don't let it decide for you," he said. "Fight it." Her breathing slowed as she focused on him instead of the artifact. The pull weakened slightly. The crystalline scientist's voice rose with excitement. "Her resistance is interfering with the artifact's targeting." Daniel nodded. "Because it's not about biology alone, it's about consent." The artifact surged again, frustrated. Energy lashes struck the chamber walls, cracking ancient stone. "We need a new approach," Daniel said. "Something it can't predict." "What do you propose, human?" the coordinator asked. Daniel took a breath. "We overload it without feeding it fear. No sacrifice, no obedience." The scientist considered this. If multiple minds resist simultaneously, it could destabilize the control logic. Sira looked around at the gathered beings. "You want us to refuse together?" "Yes," Daniel said. "Every species here. No kneeling, no offering lives, just will." Some hesitated. Others recoiled. This went against everything they believed. But the artifact pulsed again, stronger, threatening entire systems beyond this planet. Sira straightened despite the pain. "I was ready to die because I was taught that my life was a tool," she said. "I refuse that now." Her words carried power. One by one, others stepped forward. Scientists, soldiers, even diplomats. They stood upright, facing the artifact. The chamber filled with focused intent. The artifact reacted violently. Light flared blindingly bright. Energy screamed through the air. The floor shook. Daniel felt his knees buckle, but he stayed standing. "Come on," he muttered. "Do your worst." The artifact's core flickered. For the first time, it showed signs of true instability, not controlled, not contained, breaking. Sira felt the pull snap suddenly like a chain breaking. She gasped, collapsing against Daniel. He caught her just in time. The artifact screamed not in sound but in raw energy. Then the light collapsed inward. Silence fell. The artifact hovered, dark and cracked, its glow gone. Sensors showed zero output. Dead. No sacrifice. No death, just refusal. Daniel and Sira stood together, breathing hard, staring at the inert shape. Around them, the galaxy's oldest lie lay broken. And everyone present knew this was only the beginning. The artifact did not move. For a long time, no one in the chamber spoke. Sensors continued to scan it, beams of light passing over its cracked surface again and again. Every reading came back the same. No energy, no signal, no response. It was finished. Sira leaned against Daniel, both of them breathing hard, their bodies still shaking from the strain. Her silver pattern slowly faded back to a calm glow, softer than they had ever been before. For the first time in her life, they were not reacting to duty or fear, they were reacting to choice. "It's quiet," Sierra whispered. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, that's usually a good sign." Medics finally rushed in, guiding them both to safety. Daniel sat heavily on the edge of the medical platform, exhaustion crashing down on him now that the danger had passed. Sierra remained standing beside him, unwilling to let go of his hand. Across the chamber, the leaders of the expedition stared at the artifact as if it were a dead god. "The threat level is 0, the crystalline scientist announced slowly, almost reverently. "The artifact is permanently inert." Murmurs spread through the gathered beings. Some sounded relieved, others sounded lost. Entire belief systems had just collapsed. The coordinator stepped forward, posture stiff. "This changes everything." "Yes," Daniel said, voice tired but steady. "That's kind of the point." Later, when the chamber was secured and the artifact sealed behind multiple containment fields, more out of habit than necessity, the expedition gathered again. This time, it was not an emergency council. It was a reckoning. Records were reviewed. Ancient data fragments recovered from the artifact were decrypted now that its defenses were gone. What they revealed was worse than anyone expected. The artifact's creators had not been protectors or guardians. They had been rulers. Their civilization had built the artifact as a test. Any species that encountered it and willingly sacrificed one of their own was labeled manageable. Those who refused were marked as threats and erased. Fear had been the filter. Sierra listened in silence as the truth unfolded. Each new piece of information felt like a weight lifting from her chest and another pressing down on her heart. "My people," she said quietly, "we believed obedience was virtue." Daniel looked at her. "You survived that belief." "That matters." "But so many others didn't," she replied. Daniel didn't argue. Humans knew that pain well. News of the artifact's destruction spread fast, too fast. Within days, signals poured in from across the galaxy. Governments demanded explanations. Religious orders accused the expedition of heresy. Entire cultures that had built sacred rituals around necessary sacrifice reacted with shock, anger, and denial. And at the center of it all were two names: Sierra of the Luminari, Daniel Reyes of Earth. Sierra returned to her homeworld under escort. It was the first time she had ever returned without the weight of destiny hanging over her head. Her people gathered in silence as she stood before them. No ceremonial robes, no symbols of sacrifice, just herself. "I was chosen to die," she told them plainly. "I did not." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "The artifact was never a judge of worth," she continued. "It was a weapon of control. We were taught to obey it. We were taught to offer our lives. That teaching was wrong." An elder stepped forward, voice trembling. "You defy generations of wisdom." "I honor them by ending the lie that killed them," Sierra replied. Some turned away. Others wept. A few stood taller, as if something inside them had finally been given permission to live. Change did not come easily, but it came. On Earth, Daniel was less celebrated and more questioned. Human leadership reviewed every detail of his actions: risk assessments, psychological evaluations, protocol violations. In the end, the conclusion was simple. He had done exactly what humans always did when faced with an unfair system. He had refused. Daniel was offered medals. He declined most of them. He accepted one request, though: to speak. Standing before a council of multiple species, Daniel kept his words simple. "We didn't save the galaxy because we're stronger or smarter," he said. "We saved it because we don't believe anyone is expendable." Some dismissed this as emotional weakness. Others listened very carefully. Months passed. The effects rippled outward. Other artifacts were found and approached differently. Ancient systems that once demanded blood were tested with resistance instead of obedience. Many failed. Some shut down peacefully. Sacrificial traditions began to crumble, not overnight, but inevitably. Sierra and Daniel met again on a neutral station orbiting a quiet blue star. It was not a ceremony. There were no cameras, just two people sitting near a wide viewport, watching the light drift past. "I still think about it," Sierra said, "the moment I was ready to step forward." Daniel nodded. "Me too. The moment I decided not to let you." She looked at him. "You changed my life." He shrugged lightly. "You would have done the same," Sierra smiled. "I don't think so, not before, but now maybe." They sat in comfortable silence. The galaxy beyond them was still dangerous, still full of old fears and powerful weapons, but something fundamental had shifted. Humans were no longer seen as reckless newcomers. They were seen as the species that stood in front of death and said no. And Sierra was no longer a symbol of sacrifice. She was a symbol of survival. Far away, in a sealed vault, the dead artifact remained silent forever, a monument not to power, but to the moment when fear lost its grip, and the galaxy learned that no future worth having should ever demand a life in exchange for obedience.